And I think we are live. Hello, everybody. I've got everybody on mute, so let me just put you all on to say good morning. And then Jody and I are actually going to kick off now. There are a couple that haven't yet joined, but thank you very much, everybody, for coming online this morning from wherever you might be. I hope everyone's in high spirits and looking forward to our session with you today. I'm sorry that we can't be doing it live, but this actually will be just as good, and we're going to put some links in the chat. So if you know your toolbar in Zoom, down the bottom it usually is, you'll see there's a little chat bar area. So if you open that, I'm just going to type a message now. Good morning, everyone. Check that you can see that, and if you want to jot a reply back, then I'll know that you actually are able to see and chat as well. With Jody and I are going to look at the chat throughout the day. Hello, London Agency. Hello, Rivergum. So thank you. Everybody else, if you want to just find your chat area and let me know that you can actually see it, type your questions in there, and we'll be looking at those at the end of the session today and answering any questions you have. Jody and I are also going to hang around a little bit longer, probably give you an extra 10 minutes or so for any broader questions. Hello, Paper, Stone, Scissors. Thanks for joining. Hey, Anna. So yeah, just jot your questions in and we'll have a look at those at the end. All right, well, let's get started, and thanks very much for joining us this morning. As you know, I'm collaborating with Jody Sutter from New York. So Jody has held many positions, including Senior Vice President, there she is waving, Senior Vice President Director Business Development at Havas Media, also Director of Business Development at OMD USA. And she's also had a stint, a couple of years, as Board Director of the New York chapter of American Institute of Graphic Arts. Jody and I have collaborated over the years from our different parts of the globe. She has always been in business development, a great colleague and asset to be working with. And for those of you that know me, I work across Australia, New Zealand, and also Europe, focusing on the financial aspects of running an agency, and connecting with Jody was a no-brainer. So today, let's click into the slide deck. After this, I am actually recording the session, so I can provide you with a recording if you like. Jody's going to drop some links into some of the references that we have, and I can also provide a copy of the slide deck if you would like. So let me start and click in. Don't forget to use the chat to put your questions through, and we'll look at those at the end. I'll just close this down and make this full screen. Here we go. So today we're going to focus on turning the non-billable time into new business activity. And regardless of what's happening in the world at the moment with coronavirus, we are still employed as a reduced workforce potentially, but we still have billable and non-billable time. So turning that non-billable time, if your clients have gone dormant or reduced their spend, is probably more important than it ever has been. So what are we actually going to do with that time? So the why is probably the most important thing. It always has been. Why do we care about this non-billable time? It's classic. No matter what type of business you're in, whether you're in an agency, graphic design, above the line, below the line, events, advertising, or whether you're a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant, time is money. We've all got the same amount of time in our day, and it is precious. So what you choose to do with it is really what makes the difference. Now, we've got teams that are dispersed at the moment, working remotely. So most of the agencies I'm working with are working as a team through this medium, a Zoom or a Skype, and they're pretty much using that time now to reassess what they're doing within their businesses and creating a much more efficient team. They don't happen by accident. And this visual for me was a really strong indication of what a team can do. Lifting the canoe out there, it's not a canoe, what do we call it? Rowboat, the rowboat. You're all lifting now from different places in your home offices. And what is it that you as a leader are going to ask your team to focus on and collaborate, going in the same direction, moving as a highly performing team? So exactly what do you want them to do? These people that we have on our team are our key resources, and their skills and their knowledge and their competency still exists. How we use that now with the time that we have available to us is really important. So learning from our past way of running an agency, now on a reduced number of hours potentially, it's the same thing. We actually need to use our resources, our models, whether that's an Excel spreadsheet or you do actually have a resource management program, then these become even more important. You'll need to go into the back end of the settings and reduce down in your resource management program how many hours your team, if it's 4 days a week or 3 days a week or 2 or a variety of those, how much time they actually have available, so that with client billable work that you may still have, you're allocating within the constraints that you have. And if there's still that non-billable time, that time aspect is, as it always has been, is the part that we can actually manage. What is it? It's the time spent on clients which is not actually invoiced. And you may find that is higher than it has been previously. Again, through the COVID-19, there are some agencies that are offering some support complimentary at this stage. So how do you record that? Is that a new job that you need to be setting up? It's definitely number 2.2, time spent where we receive no income. There's going to be a lot of that at the moment. And that's because we actually now need to focus on some of the activities that Jody will talk about a little bit later, and other projects that you've had internally that you haven't been able to progress because we've been busy on billable client work. So a reassessment of points 1 and 2 is required. The missing timesheets, it's always been there. It should certainly not be there now. Now is the time that people do have the time to record what they're doing. And the missing timesheets, really, there is no excuse. It's probably the best time you're going to get to involve everybody working together as a highly proficient team and getting the records in order so you know what we're doing. If you do find that you reduce your workplace down to paying by the hour, and let's hope we don't get to that stage 2 or 3 of this terrible process, then those timesheets will become vital. You'll be treating them just as they were as a freelancer that will invoice for time. So understanding the sums behind that and having a process in play is going to be pretty important. This is a game worth paying for. In normal stats, working a full-time week, the average billable time sits around 60% and non-billable 40%. So even with a reduced working week, that statistic will probably be true. It might turn around the other way if you don't have live client billable time, so that the majority is non-billable at the moment. So you need to turn your headset around to be a little bit more of an investment. What am I paying my team for? This is an investment to keep them with us through this dire time and have them coming out the other end with purpose and clarity of what we've been working on during this time. When we resume, as it was before, if you were a 1 million, for an example, turnover agency, the 40% of non-billable time equates to about 400,000 of not billed hours. Missing timesheets, non-billable work on clients that's not charged. So it's quite a significant amount. And even on a reduced level, if your turnover had reduced by half or less, then this becomes an even more powerful. You can use the same sum to work out what is it costing your business. And it's therefore very important to work on the right things. So we all start at the same place. We all got up this morning. There might be some people still sleeping. Who knows? I'd hope not, but you never know. It's a glorious day here in Melbourne, so maybe they're up doing their exercise for the day. But time is the ultimate equaliser. What you choose to do with it makes all the difference. So how you work together with your teams remotely, when do you have your WIP meetings? Is it clear what they are working on? Some businesses are not clear. Some are still just chatting. Others, though, mostly are putting a strategy in place and using their leadership team to work out what is it that we're doing during this 3-6 month period, which is the estimated time that COVID-19 will reign. So it does make a difference. Try and understand that you start with the same amount of time, and how every agency chooses to use that time with their highly skilled team is going to make the difference. If there's 52 weeks in a year versus 46 weeks, these stats now are your classic 5-day-a-week agency working life. Now it's going to be reduced. So you might look at these and then multiply it by 60% or 50%, depending on what you're taking your workforce down to at the moment. However, for this presentation, I'm going to consider that we're working as a normal agency for 5 days a week. There are 52 weeks in a year. However, we don't work 52 weeks. 46 weeks is the working week. working calendar because we've stripped out public holidays and Christmas. So again, in your resource management planning, if you're trying to work on a 2,080 hours, the 52 week for a year, billing at an average of say $150 an hour, you might be expecting your individual staff members to generate around $312,000 a year in billings. That's never going to happen because they actually don't work 52 weeks in a year. So 46 weeks is really where we're at. And look, some agencies close for more time than 46 weeks. So over Christmas, they might take longer, they might close over Easter. And definitely now there'll be agencies that are looking to enforce additional days off and closure. So there is a considerable difference in the revenue that you may be predicting. And your finance team can help you with this and some of the slides that are coming up. So I'm working with agencies at the moment to reduce what is the revenue capacity, what have we got coming in, so from a top down versus the hours we are paying our staff and seeing what that gap is, what are we doing with that time in the middle with our teams. Here's an average account manager, and we're using those two principles where we're looking at, in column A, we're looking at the 52 weeks at 2,080 hours, where we might actually bill out at the 150 and look for 187,000 in billings. The opportunity is not there though. That 21,600 that you're seeing on the right in the orange, bottom right, is the difference between getting this very first step wrong because we don't work the 2,080 hours. If you are, that's fantastic. It will be $21,000 more revenue for your agency. But getting this sum right is paramount right at the beginning, and setting up your budgets. So usually after Easter, we're starting to set the budgets for the next financial year. In Australia, mostly the financial years will start 1st of July. So this you get this right, that's number one. What if we had 5 account managers and you picked the wrong figure to start with? You'll probably be predicting a lot more, and you'll see bottom right that 21,000 increases to over 100,000 that you might be setting as a revenue target, which it's not going to be. So right from the get-go, if we don't get this sum right for your team, so how many are on your team, how many hours do each of them work? Some are now at reduced rates or reduced hours. The sell rate would be the same. Work out what it is per month right now so that you've got a bit more of an accurate guess as to what is going to happen in your agency during these unusual times. Then we apply productivity. This is something that most agencies understand but don't know how to implement or include in the calculation. So I'm working on the 46 working weeks, which is the 1840 hours. So 8 hours a day, 46 weeks equals 1840 hours that potentially we could bill. However, most of us would think we'd like to have a target of 85% billable. The reality is it's probably closer to 60. And the difference is we've probably put time on jobs that is not billed, or we're missing timesheets, and we are working on non-billable work. So the target might be 85% or higher, depending on the seniority or the junior nature of the staff member. I tend to find seniors are probably closer to maybe not billable at all because they're just running the business strategy, or they are working across all clients and not technically billable. And the juniors are possibly going to be 90% billable, or their support crew, which I see less and less of. But the worker bees in the middle who attend very few WIP meetings, they're potentially just briefed on jobs and then do the work, should be 85 to 90% billable. And 60 would be an average across the whole raft of different people you have in your business. So the hours available to bill, 1564 versus 1104, and then multiplying up by that standard $150 an hour, gives you a massive difference of around about 69,000 if you pick the wrong figure. So in my mind, being finance and conservative, I'm going to work my budgets on the 60% billable and see a challenge of 165,000 per person rather than the 234, and find that actually we're just not hitting it. I'd probably do both. And again, for the financial people in your business, they would set an expected, I expect each person in this case at 150 an hour to deliver 165K each, but a stretch target might be the 234. What's it going to take to bill at that higher level? So how do we do it? I'm going to introduce the term PB, personal best. And all of the slides, as you'll notice in the deck, are all about high-performing athletes. That doesn't happen by accident, and neither do the great people in our agency. They attend professional development courses. They listen and learn, and they try and perfect what they do every day. That's why they're skilled, that's why they're paid what they're paid, and that's why you buy them for a fairly hefty price in some instances. So what is their personal best? What is your personal best? What's your PB? So to understand what it is now, and then what it's going to be moving forward, inching forward, is really what today is all about. And how do you find out where you're going to be right now with the reduced working week? It wouldn't be any different. It's just on less hours, but it still might be 60% or 85%. I've created the agency BD matrix to work out what do we do in that non-billable time and what is our PB. It looks like this. So the strategy for this calendar year or financial year, however you would like to create it, just working through the table on the left, we're breaking it down into quarters. More and more I'm seeing agencies work in sprints of 90 days. So quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. It's easier to manage and it's easier to pick up speed, I guess, earlier on in the year when you see quarter 1's perhaps not as great as you thought it would be. You also might have phasing throughout the year, so addressing that through the quarters is also important. On the right-hand side, we've got the hours that potentially could have been billed and how are we allocating those. Is it billable time or non-billable time? And in this example, I've got the January and February data from the timesheets, and it looks like the target is 60% in the blue circle at the top, and currently this particular person is at 61% thus far. So March might be a lower turnout because we've got some holidays, public holidays with Easter coming up in April. We've got the reduction of crew in March. However, you might still see that they're sitting above their target, and this would be different for every single person. Taking it to the next level, it's just the same table but stretched out to the right. Now to identify what the hours were spent on. So the client activity, hours that were not billed. This is a challenge for a lot of systems. If you're using Excel, it would be very difficult. If you do have a proper resource management program, like a function point or a workbook or a harvest or a workflow max, any of those systems, or a toggle, they might help you identify what is put on a client job but not actually billed. So that would be how you ask your staff to put their timesheets in against tasks, but the overrun component. That's the hours that have been put on a client that are not billed. Missing timesheets, no brainer. We had 160 hours in the month, and employee on, what was it, February, there were 22 hours that were not accounted for. Timesheets were just not there. Leave, so obviously people take annual leave. If you're recording that in your system, it needs to be in there so that the 160 hours are fully accounted for. And in January here, we had somebody off for a week, 40-hour week. New business investment. So having a job number for people to put their time against new business or business development is a really great idea. You can even split that into different types, depending on how sophisticated or how much analysis you want to do. So in January, this employee did no time on BD, but in February, they spent 10 hours. I usually see with agencies that are really managing this time that they've got a strategy on what each employee is doing, from the seniors to the juniors. The juniors mostly will be doing research for brands or sectors. The seniors are probably having coffee meetings. So, and in between, you've got a process that actually gets that senior out to the coffee meeting. Professional development also. So it is important that your staff are trained. You buy people in, and there's often the lament I have, oh my gosh, they're so expensive. Well, they're expensive because they come armed with that skills, knowledge and competency that I spoke of before. And when a person puts a CV through that they've attended various PD sessions, particularly now in this time when people have a lot of time to be learning and spending on developing themselves, it's really important that you actually groom them internally as to how you work and also what's happening outside of your agency. And internal time. So analysing that internal time. The pitfall here I often find is WIP meetings. Too many people attending WIP meetings. You shouldn't need to have so much chat about work that is turnkey. If it is not turnkey, it's because it's quite bespoke to a client potentially, or it's briefing on something that you require internally. Right now, having said that, there'll probably be a lot more internal time. I am seeing across the board from my Australian agencies that I work with, they're revamping their websites, they're writing blogs, they're doing social media. So again, splitting that internal time down might be of interest to see what does it actually take to get this machine, the marketing machine, turning right now, and how will you sustain that post-coronavirus. Taking it up, so now what we're doing is we're adding down the missing timesheets and having a look at what the cost is. So if you have a look at that column down the bottom, it's only 1 month, 22 hours for this particular staff member, and they're at $150. That's what I could have charged them out at. So that's $3,300 that I didn't get to charge this month of February because I didn't know what they did. So I don't have a choice. I can't bill it to anyone. I can't even approach a client to say, oh, we provided this value add. Or I can't say, oh, that was great. We invested $3,000, potentially $3,000 is the opportunity on revamping a particular page on a website. The cost side of things, you could also add to this and say their cost might be $70 an hour. So that would be the raw cost of not putting in the 22 hours. But this would be the opportunity cost. When you multiply this by an employee over a year, it's quite considerable. And it's really difficult for the agencies, it seems, to make the staff accountable for this. It's just lost money. We don't know what they were doing. So I'm paying for it. So what I'd like to suggest to you is that you ask them to be accountable for their time. You give them this spreadsheet and they fill it out because they are putting their timesheets into the system. And so each month they can be accountable to their own performance, their own PB. So manage it like it matters, because it does. If you choose to go to stage 3 and start paying staff by the hours, then these people will need to be able to invoice you correctly for what it is and justify what they've been doing, because it really does matter. And it's important that they be active and connected and creating for the future right now, but at all times. It should have always been this way. So the non-billable activity, just down the bottom of the spreadsheet here, I've just extended it to say, you know, for that first 2 months, it's about $18,000 for this one employee that was not billed because we were working on these various components. Some of it will have a return on investment, which is probably a topic for another, you know, financy kind of webinar. But this is one employee at 150, so probably a mid-weight. Imagine calculating this out for your whole agency. And I can tell you now, having worked with so many agencies, average agency size for me would probably be between 6 and 30 staff, that this figure 18,000 is closer to 50,000 a month. For the smaller agencies, probably around 30,000 a month. Just, you may as well just push it off the table, throw it in the bin, that you're just not billing it. So knowing what the team is doing is equally as important as billing the clients. It's almost like you need one person managing the invoicing to client to generate that revenue, and the other looking at this non-billable component and how do we harness and utilise our skilled workforce more efficiently. So how do you make the most of your most non-billable time, and what's holding you back? At this juncture, knowing now that there's a considerable number of hours that potentially now, more than ever, the team are working on non-billable activity, then I'm going to pass to Jody, and she's going to share you some insights as to how she would recommend you start using your time in this space. I'll just stop sharing for a moment, and Jody, you can take the screen.
Thank you, Kathryn, and for all those that's great advice, including the idea of including a BD task for the timesheets. Just, I would say the only thing I'd say there is just please make sure that you don't use it as a dumping ground. I sometimes see that, like when you don't know where else to put something, throw it in business development category. Not a good idea. But anyway, so Kathryn has just done a great job of showing us that we've got a lot of time to invest. As she pointed out, unfortunately, maybe more time than we'd like to have. You know, what I've been talking to a lot of my clients since I came back from Australia 2 weeks early, otherwise I would have been there in person with you all last week, is talking a little bit about how to pivot your new business focus. But but as Kathryn said, because we have been given this quote unquote gift of a little bit of extra time, some downtime, if clients are pulling back on their work, we do have this opportunity to look at bigger strategic things like business development. But what holds us back? Because I think some of the things that would hold us back, the biggest thing is time, right? That's the biggest excuse that I hear. And so now maybe that time isn't an issue. What are some of the other things that hold us back? Well, we have a lot of things, and these things are not frivolous, and they're quite real. There's the fear of rejection. I think business development, unfortunately, no matter how good and how strategic you are, is always a bit of a numbers game. You're probably going to be rejected more than you are accepted. So, and that's not fun. I think there are lots of strategies around it to get used to it and to not take it as personally, but still, for those of us who maybe aren't as accustomed to doing business development, fear of rejection is a big thing. There's uncertainty around your offering or your value. And this is something I see agencies explore continually. Sometimes if you are not able to feel confident in how you articulate your value, you tend to spin your wheels a lot and try to find that perfect combination of words. And usually what I find is you got to peel things back a little bit more and get down to some of the basics. So uncertainty around your offering and how you communicate that and how you communicate your value. Where to start? There are a lot of things you could be doing. And then once you do start, are you really going to allow yourself to keep going without finding that some of these other things are going to continually get in the way? And what's really going to pay off this big amount of uncertainty around the payback? New business tends to also be relatively uncertain. Again, there are ways to get better at predicting your success, and that's one of the things that I work hard on with my clients. And yet there's never going to be a guarantee. So because of these things, we tend to convince ourselves to stay in a safe place and keep doing what we've always been doing, no matter how unproductive or unsatisfying. It's really like the devil you know. But we only get results through action. And so I want to make it easier for you today to take that action. So my goal is to help you land on a strategy for generating revenue based on the stuff that you're already good at. Because when you play to your strengths, you're going to be more likely to be successful and maybe even enjoy new business activities more than you are now. So playing to your strengths, it kind of sounds obvious, but it came as a bit of an epiphany for me, and it was inspired by work that I'd done with my own clients. For too many years, I had tried to persuade my clients the value of adopting what I would call this comprehensive, well-rounded new business plan. They should be doing a little bit of everything. And my ideas were often greeted with enthusiasm, but then I would find that they wouldn't be adopted and sustained the long term. There'd always be those excuses, time being one of them, but also some of those other things that were holding us back. So I would try cajoling, I'd try threatening, and nothing really seemed to work. And I'm going to tell you why in a moment. First, I want to take a bit of a quick turn and just talk about what a well-rounded business development program looks like. Well, let me just get some of these things on here for you guys. Oops, hold on a second. Make sure my slides are formatting. There we go. So a well-rounded system, it consists of four things. It consists of your intellectual property, and this is the content that you own. These are your case studies, your positioning, the content, your service offerings. This is your intellectual property. It is a valuable set of assets. It should be cared for diligently because it is so valuable. I often see agencies neglect things like their case studies or their bios. Again, probably a topic for a whole other webinar. Now, the intellectual property is going to inform your marketing tools, your sales tools, and your closing tools. Your marketing tools I define as anything that reinforces the brand persona of the agency, anything that grows awareness, and also supports sales. So for example, this would be your website, this would be your blog, this would be your social media, your SEO strategy. It even includes things like your business cards. Then the sales tools, I include here anything that directly and sometimes exclusively supports the sales function. So this would be your customer relationship management system, your email templates, your drip campaigns. But it also would include things like membership in organizations that you use for networking and referrals. So things that directly support sales. And then closing tools. I include in the closing tools anything that you deploy when you've converted a qualified lead into a real revenue opportunity. So these are the things that support you in your quest to close a piece of business. These would be your proposal templates, your pricing strategy, and your credentials deck. A lot of people are surprised when I say I include the classic credentials deck in the closing tools category. I think the credentials deck, the classic 15 to 20 slide credentials deck, should typically be used. The best use for that is actually as a reinforcement tool. It's something that your clients want to see once they've decided, based on all the other stories you've been able to tell them about why you're valuable and what it is that you do. It's really that credentials deck that reinforces and allows them to support their decision. Anyway, ideally, all these things work well together as an ecosystem. And in fact, that's what I call it. I call it the new business ecosystem. Now, an ecosystem is any sort of a system or environment in which you place things that work well together. And when you can do that and you can nurture those components, you have a thriving environment that promotes growth. And that's what we want to do in a new business ecosystem as well. So this is usually what we start with when I work with my clients. This is not a definitive list, but it's pretty much everything you could be doing, right? But here's the thing, time is an issue, money's an issue, resources are an issue, and your strengths, what you're good at, is an issue. So it's really important that we choose the things out of this system as we create our own new business ecosystem that we are good at. And how do we do that? Okay, so when you're choosing your strengths, you want to find the right tactics and the right team. And so this means that there are going to be things that align well with your agency's strategic positioning. And this is also assuming that your agency has a strong strategic positioning. And if you don't, then probably stop here, actually stay here, finish up the webinar, and then go back and put that on the top of your list. It's really important to have that strategic positioning. It's going to inform pretty much everything you do when you pursue new business. So it's going to align with your strategic positioning, it's going to support your story, and it's going to play to the strengths of you as the agency leadership and your team. And it's these strengths that I really want to focus on for the remainder of this webinar, or more precisely, how to identify those strengths and which tactics to use to make the most of them. Because it's really going to help you answer these very important questions. Where are you going to invest your time, and how are you going to invest your money? So going back to the moment when I realized that no amount of cajoling or persuading was going to get agency leaders to do what they didn't want to do or weren't good at either, I started to realize that in order to figure out what they were good at, I had to think about the leaders themselves, the individuals. And of course, there are a lot of individuals out here that make up our human population. So as sort of a shortcut, I defined a set of what I call new business personalities. And they are the hunters, the promoters, the communicators, and the thinkers. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one of them today. Now, you also had taken a quiz, or most of you had. And if you haven't yet, by the way, I will be I'll be putting that link back into the chat at the end of the webinar so that you can. What I find is that each one of you probably falls into one of these categories predominantly, and maybe a little bit of both. Usually I find there's a predominant one and a secondary one. So what are these folks? Well, let's start with the hunters first. So these hunters, if you're a hunter, you are someone who is a natural born salesperson. Hunters are energized by the connections that they can make with other people. They feel at ease when they're interacting with strangers on the phone or in person. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here. Let me go ahead. Customer satisfaction is something that's very, very important to them. These are the agencies that are led by hunters are the ones where they believe the client is always right. I also describe the hunter as the type of person who can get on, just to use a US reference, to get on an airplane at JFK in New York and sit on that plane for 5 or 6 hours in business class and get off the plane in LA with not only a business card, but a potential deal. This is a hunter. A lot of agencies, you don't find hunters commonly at agencies. They're a relatively rare phenomenon. The next one are the communicators. These are a little bit, I find a little bit more common in agencies. And communicators are big picture and big idea people. They tend to captivate a crowd. They're your TED talkers. They are the people who are perennially on the pitch team. I don't know if this is an issue at your agency. I know it's been an issue at agencies that I've used to work with, but I work with now, and when I was running business development, there are those people that we'd continually go back to because they were so strong in the room. These communicators, these big idea people, these people who love to captivate a crowd, the downside is they're not always that patient with the details. And to be honest, I've also found they're not always that good in one-on-one relationships. Then there are the promoters. Now, the promoters have something to say and they're not afraid to say it. They are the big personalities. They really enjoy being the center of attention. So a bit similar to communicators in that sense, but they tend not to be quite as sort of stage ready. So the person I use as my poster child for the promoter is Gary Vaynerchuk. And hopefully everyone down there knows Gary Vaynerchuk. He's the one who founded and still runs VaynerMedia. Whether you love him or hate him, he is that big personality who is constantly practicing what he preaches. He's always on social media. He's always talking about his stuff. Not actually the most eloquent guy, but always out there promoting himself. His business life bleeds into his personal life and vice versa. And then there are the thinkers. So these are the introverts of the group, right? Now, like the communicators, here's what they share with the communicator. They're actually quite good, like the communicator, at adapting these complex ideas and turning them into something that's easy to understand. So like the communicator is really good with that big idea. The thinkers are pretty good with that too, because they really understand the data about how to make it clear. They've got the patience for details. I find that often these thinkers are your heads of research departments. And even though they may be introverted, even though they're fueled by that introverted energy, they can often be strong presenters, and they can often be quite good in one-on-one situations as well. So we have these 4 personalities, these 4 profiles. You may already be realizing which ones you resemble the most. But let's say, but now the question might be, okay, I know which one I am. I know which one my colleagues are. Now we've got this team. How do we figure out what to do? Well, first, I want to take you through the result of the quiz. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the qualities of each one of these guys and then how to work with them with your team. So the results of the quiz that we took so far, and again, if you haven't taken it, I would offer you a chance to go back in there. And the other thing that I'm going to be doing is I would be happy to get back to you on an individual basis and let you know how you scored individually, as well as how you all scored as a group. But the last time I took the tally, I was surprised to see we had to say a surprising number of hunters in the group. This is really unusual. So I don't know, maybe it's the Australian personality, maybe it's sort of that entrepreneurial spirit that's really well represented here. We had a lot of hunters, but not surprisingly, a fair amount of communicators as well. We're a little low on promoters, and the highest of the bunch were the thinkers. So you thinkers might be thinking, well, I have all this introverted energy. I've never felt I was good at business development. What do I do? Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So if you are a hunter, or if your agency is run by a hunter, the best thing that I can say to you today is to work your network, nurture relationships, and continue to close those deals. And if you are supporting someone like that, I would say to do what you need to do to support them. Make sure that CRM is in really good shape. Make sure that there's a support team ensuring that agency leader is having time to work their network, having time to do that outbound prospecting. And then make sure that there's the follow-up, so that you can help them close the deals, that you can help them set up the meetings and do the follow-up after those meetings. If you're a communicator, if you're the type of person, or if your agency is run by the type of person who loves being in front of a crowd, then get them out onto the speaking circuit. This is also, by the way, where a strong positioning is really important, because you can be super in front of a crowd, but if you don't have a compelling pitch, if you don't have a polarizing point of view, people aren't going to be as interested in hearing from you. But if you're run by a communicator type personality, get out there, become a keynote speaker, become a thought leader. These folks tend to be publicity hounds, so maybe support them with some publicity help. If you're an agency that's run by a promoter, then you want to kind of build a brand around them. Again, go back to someone like Gary Vaynerchuk and maybe make him a bit of a case study. Look at how his agency is built around his personality. Now, his agency has actually grown a lot, so I would also say that he's not the only business development resource that they have anymore, but I would also venture to guess that a lot of the leads that come across the transom are still coming across because of the force of his personality. So you want to give these folks an outlet to express themselves. With Gary Vaynerchuk, in his case, it's all about social media. And then you want to be there to field and follow through on those leads. And then finally, for the thinkers. So this might be a personality for whom it's going to be a lot easier to develop a strategy around things like a research study or a set of white papers. So these often can take longer to produce, and so you may need to start to add in some ramp up time. So by the way, in a perverse way, this moment for thinkers is quite valuable, because you may actually have a unasked for but valuable quiet time to start figuring out what that longer term strategy is. So if you do a content strategy like this, you're going to then want to merchandise the heck out of that content. And then if you're supporting that person like a communicator, you want to back them up with strong PR. So I've been focusing a lot sort of on the agency leadership, but there are other people on their team. And so who are they and what do they do? So when I work with the clients that I work with, a lot of times their business development team looks a lot like this. It's you and you alone, especially if you're a smaller agency, and those are the types of agencies I tend to work with. Now, if you're running business development for one of the small agencies, maybe you're lucky enough to have a very close relationship with your CEO. And of course, maybe you are also the CEO. But this can be super valuable if you've got that strong relationship with the CEO, because you can feed off each other, and you can make sort of the sum is going to be, or the whole is going to be greater than the sum of its parts. Maybe you've got a little bit big, you're slightly bigger, and you have a new business director that reports into you. Very lucky. Maybe you're even a larger agency and you've got support team that helps that new business director run his or her team. Maybe you're really large and you've got more than one office, and so you've got more than one new business director in those offices. Maybe you've been able to grow your team and include marketing and PR as well. I think that marketing and business development are two different skill sets. They work beautifully well together when they're working right, but they really are two different things. It's hard to be both a new business person and a marketing person. No matter how big your agency is, you're going to be supported with these different disciplines. Now, sometimes there may only be one person in charge of that discipline. Maybe again, that's you. But you're going to be supported with creative, with production, with strategy and research. And you want to figure out how to best use their strengths in order to help you with your new business strategy and implementation of that strategy. Then as you get smarter with your strategy and smarter with your resources, you may even want to think about the third-party resources that you can use to supplement what you've got in-house. And this is especially important for a smaller agency. So I know that we're starting to run out of time a little bit, but what I did is I set up a few different scenarios, because you might be thinking now, well, what does this really look like for my agency? So I want to run through those just quickly. So if you are, we've got a few hunters in the group of people, both who are here today as well as who are with us in Sydney. So hopefully this is relevant for a lot of you. So if you are an agency run by a hunter, whoops, sorry about that, sensitive mouse. Like I said, that hunter, you want to set things up so that hunter is working their network, nurturing relationships, and closing deals. Now, maybe underneath that hunter, or in the organization chart underneath that hunter, you've got an account manager who can also play the role of a new business manager. So they're not doing everything around new business, because of course the hunter is going out and bringing home the dinner, but that person, that new business manager, that account manager, can be set up to do the things that they're really strong at doing. Organizing content, developing content, and making sure that intellectual the intellectual property arsenal is being well maintained and cared for. They're good at managing others, so maybe you're assigned to them pitch team management when you are pitching new business. Then if you've got a strategist on the team, maybe put them in charge of agency positioning, as well as the big ideas that you need to come up with when you do go pitch a piece of business. And if you're lucky enough to have a support team, a strong coordinator, that's the person who's going to maintain those lists, do the scheduling, and keep that hunter on track. So this might be your year one strategy as you ramp up and start to see what works. And once it gets going and once things are working, what does year two look like? Well, maybe that's when you want to bring in that third-party resource. Maybe you want to bring in a lead generator to expand the capabilities of the hunter, increase the volume of leads that hunter can reach, and maybe even expand into new categories of business. And then on year three, maybe you've gotten to the point where you're successful enough that you can start bringing things back in-house, and you hire a new business director. And maybe you put that lead generator is doing such a great job for you that you keep them on, but you have them report into the new business director. So taking some of that burden off of the hunter. But maybe you also expand the hunter's capabilities a little bit by adding some publicity and maybe adding some thought leadership. Thought leadership can be challenging for hunters, but not impossible, especially if you've got the good support. So they're pushing that hunter beyond their core strengths, and they're introducing complementary capabilities into that new business ecosystem. Let's take another look. If your agency is run by a communicator, again, they are the big idea people who love being in front of the crowds. Maybe you still have that new business marketing director. Potentially they're not necessarily the account manager. Maybe you can afford to hire a new business marketing director on your team. So they still are, though, running that intellectual property arsenal. They're still managing the pitch management, but because they are a little more focused on new business, maybe they're also good at following up leads. Remember, that communicator, they are not terribly interested in those one-on-one relationships. So you're going to need a strong person who is good at sort of following that communicator into those keynote speeches, collecting the cards, and taking it from there in terms of nurturing and building those personal relationships, nurturing those leads. You got your strategist who's still going to maybe help that communicator flesh out big ideas and write content. Probably what you want to do there, since the communicator likes to be the center of attention, is you want that strategist maybe to be on more of a junior level, someone who's going to collaborate well with that big idea, big thinker person. And then again, a strong coordinator to help you maintain those lists, scheduling the communicator's time. And maybe here you want that person to help you out with things like social media, because that communicator is generating a lot of thought leadership that can be merchandised beautifully on social media. So that's your year one plan for a communicator. Year two, there you go. Year two, that third-party resource that you might want to bring in is a publicist. Again, you're talking about sort of expanding what you've already gotten good at, what was already running like a well-oiled machine, see if you can like grow it a little bit bigger. So they're increasing the exposure for the communicator. And then for year three, this is if it's been, I really went kind of nuts here. This is if you've been extraordinarily successful, then maybe what you want to do is, again, start to see if you can add some internal resources. So you've still got your publicist working hard with the communicator. Maybe in year three, they're now working more closely with a new business director, that marketing director. Maybe the new business director and your strategist have started to grow out their team. So under new business, they've got access now to production talent, a new business manager. Maybe that new business manager has a complementary skill. Maybe they're a hunter, so you can complement that communicator-led strategy. You've got a marketing coordinator who could help with the arsenal of intellectual property and the marketing strategy. And then on the strategist side, maybe they're in charge of things like social media strategy, as well as managing a team or a person who's a thought leadership writer who can help continue to build the profile of that communicator. Now, You also may want to, if you can't afford or don't have access to that internal team, there are also places here where you could continue to grow and expand your third-party resources. And in this particular scenario, two great places to do that would be in production, outsourcing production, whether that's video or photography or other type of visual production. And under strategy, outsourcing your social media strategy. There are a lot of great people out there who can work with you, who don't necessarily have to be part of your agency team. So just to wrap up before we go to Q&A, I guess my big message is, if you can learn how to play to your strengths, my hope is that we can start to tailor a very specific new business strategy that's right for you and right for those strengths. I think that what that tends to lead to is you winning with more confidence. At least that's what I've seen with the agencies I've worked with. You're also going to, I think, start to see that you'll be investing your time wisely, because you're not going to be trying to do things that you're not good at, which usually end up just being a waste of time. And then through this, you're going to start to be able to cultivate growth. And I sort of emphasize both the cultivate as well as growth, the sense of cultivating your new business ecosystem, continuing to add components that work well with each other. So with that, oh, by the way, the other thing too, sometimes a new business coach is also the perfect third-party resource that you might need. And if that's the case, you'll have a way to contact me at the end. So we wanted to leave, I think we do have some time for Q&A. And I think there's a way, Kathryn, for people to raise hands that you might see, or you can type a question into the Zoom chat.
Yeah, I think probably best type the question, then we can address it. It's a lot easier, otherwise everyone might jump in at the same time. And what I'm thinking is picking up on all the ecosystem that Jody refers to, and the time that we find that we've always had, but now possibly it feels like we've got more, that you actually have a strategy and a plan to look at year one. This is 2020. What is it that you would envisage your agency plucking off those charts that Jody suggested to you? And through her experience, and mine also, I do see it takes the first year to create your plan and to start with the basic steps, and then the second year to build on that. By the third year, possibly even in the second, particularly if you've got a communicator at the helm, they're already getting speaking gigs in the industry and the wider industry, in your client's industry. But you've got people in-house that were previously non-billable time that has now been harnessed to work on the social media, to work on the white papers, to once you've identified what strength they have, they're supporting, as Jody indicated, those leaders that are the hunters and the communicators and the promoters. So finding what that is in your own agency now is a great time to do that, and to build a plan. And it is an ongoing, sustainable plan with that non-billable time. Really important to identify what it is and to put it into play right now. If you need any help with that, of course, we obviously know how to work with you on that side, and we're offering our available services to you to assist you to create the templates and to coach you in the right direction.
Kathryn, I was also thinking sometimes it's just a matter as well, once you can sort of identify your strengths profile, of looking at what you're already doing and starting to recognize what you can shed that doesn't fit your strengths, but also sometimes looking at how much more mileage you can get out of those tactics. I think a lot of times I find that, for instance, with a speaking strategy, that there isn't sort of both the pre and the post. That merchandising is the word I'd really like to use. Is you might be getting out there, you might be getting your leadership out there, and yet that's sort of you consider that sort of the project done, instead of thinking, well, now that they're out there, what are the leads that we're generating? How are we following up with them? How do we create a cycle and a circle?
Yeah. So everybody, let's have a look and see if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask Jody and myself. I'm just going to put on the chat so that we can actually see your questions. Let me just pull that back up. One moment. As I get back into my... Oh, where's it gone? Hang on.
Oh, did I do something?
We just need to stop sharing actually. So I am just going to grab back to my screen, stop the share, and here we all are. So Danielle from Rivergum, what are some of the methodologies to identify your real strengths and how do you place value? So good question. Jody, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, well, I think that in some way, the quiz is a good start. I mean, the quiz in some ways is useful and it's also fun. So go ahead and take that. And if you have taken it, I will get back to you with what I think what the personality is that you're starting to show. You know, a lot of it is looking at what you already know that you like doing. So it's a lot of it's sort of self-awareness. If that makes sense. I think ideally is when those things are described, you should be able to look at them and say, yeah, that's me. You know, yeah, I totally love being in front of a crowd. I just really dislike the detail orientedness of being a hunter, of following up on those leads. Just get me out there. Let me ask you back, Danielle. Were you able to identify one or more of those personalities that where you were predominant?
Oh, there's probably two of them. It'd be interesting because Nadine, my colleague, is on this as well. So I'd be interested to see whether what I think is what she thinks as well. I think there's certain elements of a couple of those things that make sense. But it's also been even within the agency about how we identify the agency strengths. We play in a very small sector of the market, and we offer a broad range of services, and the skill sets that we have are in response to client request, I guess, or a client need. So I guess I'm thinking about strengths in terms of leadership strengths and team strengths, but then also what do we deliver well, how do we deliver it well, and making sure that we're not pushing a barrow that doesn't really add value. That's probably that balance.
Can I answer a bit on the value side? You need to do some ROI. So when you know you've created value, it's because your clients are telling you so. And if they're not telling you, then you probably haven't yet got a process in play to assess the results. So quite often when I'm working with an agency, we completely flip the new business, the marketing, to not what we are doing, but what it's going to do for the client. So with your experience, you will know, and this is your case studies, you will know what you've done for previous clients, and you need to now reverse that into what you can use and prove that you will deliver. It's almost like a guarantee to future prospects. So this client, we can do this for you because we've done it before. So in simplistic terms, that's what it is. Creating the value, if that's a dollar value, it can be also not necessarily dollars. It might be a qualitative experience or number of hits, etc. So you might just find that you need to be able to articulate what that is to be able to create that value and then attach a dollar value or a qualitative value to your client.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions? Anna, just unmute you. Hang on, unmute.
No, I've just said I have to leave. I just put a message. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We'll send you a copy. Thanks, Anna. Bye.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the floor? Give me a hoy and I'll unmute you so we can answer those. No. Fantastic. Well, listen, we are right on 10:30. What I'm going to do is I have been recording the session, so I'll send you a link for that. Jody and Jody has got a complimentary service that she's offering you at the moment. Did you want to explore that a little bit more?
So bear with me, folks, while you're there. And I guess we can also send this in the follow-up email as well. Let me go. I need to get back to Zoom. I need to go back to my chat window.
Are you going to drop the link in?
I'm trying to.
Okay.
I tried to get back to the chat window. Hold on a second. If I seem to. So
do you've got a link to your site, or is it an email that you're going to send?
I'm going to send, what I'll do is when I do this, when I go ahead and send the link to the quiz for anyone who wants to take that.
Yep.
Hold on a second, let me go. Oh, I'm trying to get to the chat and I really, okay. Here's the link to the quiz for anyone who wants to still take it. Go, return. Why isn't it going? Sorry, hold on a second, everyone. It was going just to Anna. It should be going. And then I promised to let you guys go. All right, I'm sorry, folks. I'm just having, I don't know why it's being.
We can email it through. Oh, there it is. It's popped into
that's the quiz.
So
if you would like to do that. And then, yes, I'd be happy to email you a link to a complimentary consulting session that I am providing agency leaders during the global pandemic who just need about 30 minutes with a new business expert to ask what they should be doing under the circumstances. And I'm happy to provide some quick advice.
Yeah, fantastic. And similarly, I'm finding I have Finance Guru on call, which is a 30-minute complimentary on my website. You just ring me and I'm happy to chat to you for 30 minutes. It's probably, I'm getting a lot more calls these days because people have more time. I think they're also feeling like this is a community thing and they're able to make that call. There is no charge, and I think most of you on this call know me anyway, so I look forward to having a chat with you if I can help in any way. That's why I created Kathryn's Mint, now known as KMint. That's why we're doing the webinar for you, to try and provide you with some clues and some tips to really grow what you're currently offering and do a really awesome job. So look, thanks very much everybody for joining us today. I'll send you the link a little later on and look forward to being in touch with you again. Keep the spirits high and reach out if you need a chat with either Jody or myself, and we'll look forward to working with you. All right, bye everyone.
Thanks everyone.